Hi and welcome back to this series. I didn't expect to make 2 videos in one day, but honestly this series has been so therapeutic for me. And in all honesty, this was a video I had been preparing and thinking about posting for a bit. I just hadn't done it yet, and so I figured I may as well go ahead and do it. I recently made a video in this series called Weird Prayers I've Had to Pray. Because on my journey, if you've been following my journey since 2024 especially, but even just this year, you know I've been through a lot of weird stuff on my journey of waiting for marriage and remaining a virgin until marriage. And one of the most horrifying things I've been through has been discovering the number of women in the church who say that they're virgins but they're not. And the way that this became a problem for me was that they were my elders. And so because I am a virgin waiting for marriage, I needed godly discipleship from older women to help me exercise and learn the self-discipline I needed to exercise self-control and all those things. And because these older women were lying about being virgins, their advice was useless and honestly had the opposite effect on me and caused me to struggle more with temptation to watch porn in the past. And so over time, with the help of my parents and their prayers, especially my dad's, God has helped me use more biblical discernment when it's come to dealing with women in the church who are Christian who lie about being virgins for one reason or another. Because these women are very creepy. The more time has gone on, the more it has grieved my spirit, because in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 22, as I shared in the video I made before on this on weird prayers I've had to pray, I shared that in Deuteronomy 22, the consequence for a woman who lied about her virginity when she got married was getting taken to the front of her father's house and stoned to death. And I shared that because of all the disturbing, honestly, witchcraft I was exposed to with the number of women who say they're virgins in the Christian church but are lying, because the reason that they got stoned in Deuteronomy 22 is because that is a form of witchcraft. Witches got stoned in the Old Testament, and so did women who lied about their virginity. And sadly, the way that I saw this manifest in my life was that when there was a woman who was saying that she was a virgin but she was not, in the spiritual realm, and again, I'm not going to talk too much about this because trying to talk about the spiritual gifts in the past got me into trouble. And again, I'm trying to respect that in the Bible, Eve did get deceived and not Adam. And so I've tried to learn discretion when I talk about the spiritual realm, because honestly, I've learned to let men lead, because I've learned that I can become confused at times. But I will say that over a long period of time, meaning years, I noticed patterns among women who would say that they were virgins, and even some of them got married, saying and testifying to their husbands they were virgins in the Christian church, and they were not. And the commonality I saw was really weird activity, almost paranormal activity surrounding these women's lives. Stuff that was anyway, I'll just say that. The atmosphere of their homes would be weird. There would be stuff that happened that sometimes felt like it was out of a horror movie. And I never understood why until later on, when God would remove these women from my life. It would eventually come out, that it's because even though that woman was saying she was a virgin, because sexual morality is an open door to the enemy, what you were observing was the consequences and the evil spirits and all of that ungodly influence from the kingdom of darkness that woman opened the door to through her sexual immorality. Because even though she said she was a virgin, just because she says it doesn't mean those doors in the spiritual realm aren't open for junk to happen in her life, because she's still engaged in fornication. So over time and through a lot of heartache and honestly trauma, I learned to test every spirit when a woman says that she's a virgin in the church, because there are a lot of women who honestly are witches, because again, and they're creepy, because even when there was one who was you were able to confront them, you had substantial evidence that they were lying about their past, these women would just die on the hill of saying they were virgins no matter what. And it was the creepiest thing to this day I've ever seen. Again, I get that that might be a trauma response, but I personally saw the backlash of being deceived into believing these women's testimonies when they were phonies, Pharisees, hypocrites, all the stuff. And what I learned was to allow the men to lead in testing every spirit, because if a man is suspicious of a woman's integrity, the man may be discerning something in the spiritual realm. As I shared in the last, I think, 2 episodes or so, God gave men headship for a reason, and I've noticed that the most effective way to stay immune to these women who are operating in witchcraft by lying about their virginity is to submit myself to the leadership and the discernment of the men and let the men lead, because the women, whether they are liars or not about their fornication, they cannot stand when a man is leading fully when they are hiding that type of sin in their hearts and in their lives. And so the whole thing has been extremely creepy, but I'm going to go into some more biblical prayers I've prayed for my own, honestly, self-defense in the spiritual realm against women like this. And it feels really embarrassing to talk about, but it's helped me out. It's given me more peace at home and in my life. And it's also helped me stay on the walk of purity by using the Bible to discern things. The number one prayer, because I was thinking about sharing in the last episode of this, is for favor. So I'm going to start with Proverbs 18 verse 22. It's written, "He who finds a wife finds what is good and obtains favor from the Lord," depending on the translation, right? Favor from God is something that cannot be faked. And favor from God is something that in the Bible, I noticed a pattern from Genesis all the way to Revelation, from the Old Testament to the New, that when there was a virgin woman, there was a virgin woman of God who was appointed by God to break a generational curse, do something big for the kingdom of Christ. The word that was used to show in the Bible that God was with that virgin girl was favor. The first example I'm going to share is Esther, the example of Queen Esther. Queen Esther was a virgin. She was among the virgins taken in for, to see if Queen, God forbid, King Xerxes would choose to be his new queen instead of Vashti. And it is written in Esther chapter 2 that Esther found favor above all the other virgins. First with the men who were taking care of her, like the man who was guarding the virgins in like the place before they went to be presented to the king, and then with the king himself. It is written favor. She found favor. She won favor with everyone she met. And favor is something that God gives in the Bible. And again, we go back to Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds what is good and obtains favor from the Lord. So this was the first instance where I actually saw that associated with a woman who was a virgin. I think that we can go earlier in scripture, but I'm just sharing what I remember right off the bat. The next example is actually the Shulamite bride in Song of Songs. In Song of Songs, chapter 8, it is written that the Shulamite bride testified to have been a virgin by saying, "I am a wall." The words "I am a wall" was a euphemism for "I am a virgin." Because they were using the analogy of wall and door in that scripture in Song of Songs 8. And she's like, "I'm a wall, I'm not a swinging door." Because swinging door was the euphemism, the analogy for a promiscuous woman. So the Shulamite bride testified to Solomon, "I am a wall." And she said in that scripture, "I found favor with King Solomon because I was a virgin." So this is another place in scripture where favor, the favor of virgins, virgin girls, is written about in scripture. But probably one of my favorite parts in scripture that talks about this is in Luke chapter 1, where the angel Gabriel visited the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus. This was a prophecy that Jesus would be born to a virgin. And Gabriel said, "You are highly favored," something like that. You are blessed and highly favored. So what I began praying as a tool of discernment based on the Bible, and this feels so weird to say, but if God uses it to help other girls who are trying to really wait for marriage and not get deceived by these type of women, then let God use it, is all I'm going to say. I started praying for the favor of God over chaste virgins from Genesis to Revelation, based on Esther 2, Song of Songs 8, and Luke chapter 1. Because God's favor opens doors that the enemy can't shut. God's favor opens doors that the enemy can't counterfeit. Because salvation was achieved through all these women's testimonies, but especially the testimonies of Queen Esther, who was used of God to get the Jews delivered, and of course Mary, the mother of Jesus, who birthed the Messiah into the world. So that's what I've started praying for, the favor of God over chaste virgins over my life, and that also to test my own heart. Because when I was younger, again, I was pretty sheltered growing up, and I didn't understand how common it is for women to lie. It may be because these women experience some type of trauma that I don't understand, but I'm not going to try. No. Let me not enable them, because enabling doesn't help anyone. I've been through my share of hardship in my life. I grew up without my biological father, didn't meet him until I was an adult. I endured death in the family. I've endured, honestly, sexual assault. A stranger touching me in a way I didn't consent to, though it didn't go any further than touching me with my clothes on, like with his hands, and kissing the side of my face. Forgive me for trigger warning. Not giving a trigger warning first. So I've been through trauma in my life. But a woman lying about her virginity in the Bible, that's an offense. That's a stumbling block. And in my own life, I actually saw women lying about their virginity and being die-hard liars, causing younger women so many problems that it genuinely is like, for me, I needed to talk about it with my family. And so I'm sharing what's helped me and my family. Staying submitted to male leadership, because God will reveal to the men, the men who are the heads of the homes. Any woman who is operating in that spirit of divination, that's a spirit of witchcraft, because of sexual morality. Again, I've talked about Jezebel, but I'm not going to go too much into it. Lying about your virginity is a form of witchcraft. And I don't blame any good man who is suspicious and tests the spirit on women in the church who say that they are virgins. Because I personally have met more than I am happy to even admit, to the point where at first it was kind of funny, but now it's become scary. Now it's put the fear of God in me, to the point where I talk to God and I'm like, God, if I breathe the lie out of my mouth, and if I'm living a lie, please send the sword of the Lord against me, because it's that serious. If it weren't that serious, women wouldn't have been put to death for in the Old Testament. It's that serious. But I share this trying not to get upset, because again, if you've been watching my testimony for years now, you know how many problems the poor influence of women like that cause me. You know how many problems that caused me. And so it's something that I've become impassioned about, even though it just feels silly to talk about, because women, it shouldn't be normalized for women to be this crazy in the church. But anyway, that's all I'm going to share. I really hope this blesses someone today, and especially a younger virgin girl.